Welcome to my presentation on gaming addiction. Are video games harmful or helpful? Presented by a gaming addict. First, for some background. Multiple studies have tried to define what gaming addiction is and what to look for. A collective definition for a gaming addiction is anyone who plays any form of a digital game for an extended period that starts to affect other aspects of their lives. Provided by articles by Adair, Coos, and Griffiths, there are 2.7 billion gamers worldwide, and roughly 2 to 3% of them are clinically disordered. Of these 2.7 billion, the United States of America and China are currently the top two countries where the gamers are located. On top of this, 25% of gamers are under the age of 18, and 60% of them are male. This does not mean that only minors who are male can develop an addiction. This just means it is more likely since there are more opportunities for such an occurrence to take place. Multiple studies have shown that the most addictive type of video games are MMOs, RPGs, and MMORPGs. This is suspected to be because of the immense reward system integrated into the game that causes the brain to release dopamine the longer the gamer plays. However, someone can become addictive to any video game of other genres. Many gamers are addicted to open world, story, puzzle, or shooter games because, like all forms of media, they start to take one out of reality and into the better world that is more controllable and imaginative. Some of these games may include titles like World of Warcraft for MMORPG, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for open world, Life is Strange for story, and A Way Out for puzzle, and Halo for shooter. While the majority of gamers are under the age of 18, any age is susceptible to this condition. According to Adair, genetics and environmental risks could also play a role in this development of an addiction. Gaming addiction has serious health side effects that can become amplified the longer the condition progresses. According to Coos and Griffiths, documented in the Journal of Behavioral Addictions, many symptoms may include anxiety, psychosocial or academic problems, suicidal intentions, mood modification, loneliness, depression, sleep deprivation, dehydration, aggression, restlessness, low self-esteem, lack of engagement, and many more. To help the process of defining the criteria needed to show whether someone may have an addiction or not, psychiatrists have decided to use pre-existing mental condition criteria as a basis for gaming addiction. Elaborating more on Coos and Griffiths' articles, they found that one must meet a certain number of criteria to have an addiction, such as being preoccupied, repeated unsuccessful efforts to control addiction, irritability, lies, illegal activities, withdrawal, important social activities given up, and recurrent physical or psychological problems. Now for the impact. First, global. According to some statistics found by Dr. Drew, there are currently 60 million people who have a gaming addiction. This is approximately between the 2 to 3% of all gamers in the world that I mentioned earlier that have an addiction. There are also an extensive number of gaming companies like professional sports that create, compete, and entertain millions of people around the world. Lastly, the community of video games is tremendously large, with people spreading video games across the internet 24/7 with platforms such as Twitch and YouTube for millions of others to enjoy. A perfect example of the 3 global impact pillars is the professional League of Legends player called Uzi, real name Jian Jihao, who quit esports and video games because of his diagnosis of type 2 diabetes and other health-related problems. Jihao sent a message to his fans when he retired that is quoted by Adair that states, "I regret to inform you all that I am making the decision to retire. The doctor has told me that if I continue, there could be serious complications. Thank you to my fans for your support and companionship all these years." On a national level, things aren't much different. The US rivals other countries for most gamers in one location in the world. According to Statista.com, 65% of Americans played video games in July of 2020, 73% in April of 2021, and continues to fluctuate between 65 and 70% of all Americans who played even to today. An example of how video games are spreading and growing in California is the fact that multiple gaming events take place in LA, fostering a bigger community of gamers. Locally, video games are still present in the form of numerous conventions being held in Sacramento annually. Now, it is hard to tell you how many people in each region or area are addicted, but my goal in showing these implications is to foster the idea to you that there is an enormous community of people globally, nationally, in California, and locally that continues to grow. The more people that play video games and see that the community promotes video games then becomes an incentive for them to play more, leading to more gaming addiction cases. Therefore, these implications were presented as probability cases. The more gamers there are, the more likely a gaming addiction occurs. The other sides. Video games are not necessarily bad to play. They can actually have health benefits, both physical and mental, when used appropriately. Research from the Cleveland Clinic has shown that video games can have an impact on the brain's plasticity, which is the ability to change in response to new information, as well as its gray matter, which is responsible for controlling one's movement, memories, and emotions. Video games also boost task management, abilities, and how closely one pays attention to details. To quote Cleveland Clinic, the danger of a particular situation and the resolution of a situation gives you a sense of accomplishment, which doesn't happen very much in real life. This makes a video game incredibly stimulating. Video games can teach people how to do certain tasks. A cooking game might teach people the importance of different spices in cuisine. A puzzle game might show how to look at the bigger picture. Or a shooter game may visually show you how to be extremely accurate and have special awareness based on noise and external information, something that athletes on courts and fields strive to perfect. Video games are made to be fun and entertaining. They were meant to tell a story. According to research done by Clark and P. Chavon, the brain cannot tell the difference between real life and fiction when it comes to screens, specifically games. When people play a story like The Last of Us, the person knows consciously that Sarah dying isn't real. But the brain and the way it stores memory and processes visual stimuli don't know the difference between Sarah dying in the game and a real life person. This is why gamers tend to cry when a video game character dies, because they just learned about a whole life story. Yet conversely, some people might not cry when a real life person dies, because someone can live as a person in the game but didn't live the life of the real life person. The brain physically cannot tell the difference between the two deaths, and that one of those deaths isn't real. Because of the way our brains process games, inspirational quotes can mean more to a gamer if said by a real person. Here are 4 examples. A hero need not speak when he is gone. The world will speak for him, from the game Halo. The ending isn't any more important than any of the moments leading to it, from To the Moon. I've struggled a long time with surviving, but no matter what, you have to find something to fight for, from The Last of Us. And if our lives are already written, it would take a courageous man to change the script, from Alan Wake. All of these are quotes from popular video games during emotional moments in the games that the gamer's brain would take as real and inspiring. Christianity. Drug abuse has been mentioned as far back as 5000 BC, known as the Joy Plant. And even though there is no date for when alcohol was first used, it is known that the Bible first mentions drunkenness in the story of Noah and the Code of Hammurabi. In about 1700 BC, Jesus never mentions addiction explicitly himself. However, the Bible does mention the idea that alcohol is a gift from God meant to be enjoyed, but drinking too much and getting drunk is a sin. The same applies to gaming. It is a gracious gift from God that people can experience so many different stories through video games. But if someone lets the game control over one's life over God, then it turns to sin and idolatry. A good analogy for why people play video games can be connected to what Jesus said in Matthew 13:44. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then, in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. While some gamers do put video games ahead of God and make them their heavens, it is also a simile representing the feeling. Games provide a new world unreachable today and lets the player go about and obtain that land with their own work in the game, making it incredibly joyous. Society must not deprive a culture full of technology and the internet from the entertainment society gave to others to use. Rather, one must make use of the godly blessing given to humanity. As said in Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. The ability to learn from mistakes of so many varieties without any consequences in the real life through video games is an incredible learning tool. Solutions. The best scenarios that have happened so far are only two circumstances. The first is that some countries have already created rehab centers specifically for gaming addicts. The second is that in 1993, Congress created the ESRB, or Entertainment Software Rating Board, to recommend that the age group a certain video game was created for. There is the famous E for everyone, but there are also many others. There's EC, early childhood, E10+, everyone ages 10 and older, T for teenagers, M for mature 17 years or older, AO for adults only, and RP for rating pending. These guidelines are required by law to be printed on the front of every video game sold physically, on the front of digital versions, and the first thing a person sees when watching the video game trailers. Abiding by these guidelines is never necessary. However, one solution to the addiction problem is to regulate oneself or one's children based on these guidelines to help them not play something harmful to them. Family support or a therapist is always a good option for any form of addiction. The therapist will help set goals and time plans and will also listen to the stories of the games someone plays while advising on how to separate the fake world from the real world, something mentioned earlier that the brain has a hard time doing on its own. It is important to note, however, that the studies about gaming and gaming addiction are not yet completed thoroughly. Many studies contradict each other, and those same studies have too little data to use properly, or some use only a select age group, whereas others only use limited criteria. Either way, it is important to encourage further studies on the matter to continue the understanding of this perplexing subject. As the Yuba Sutter community, people must be willing to accept the possibility that a game can become a medical or mental problem when used wrongly and must not judge those who suffer from this addiction. Promoting the therapists we have now would greatly help as well, as not many people know that therapists are an option for this. The state of California needs to do the same thing, except they need to have at least 2 easily accessible clinics and health centers dedicated to gaming addictions that are severe enough to need direct and long-term help. There are currently no clinics and only 1 counseling center in Newport Beach, California. As a nation, the exact same thing must happen, at least 2 clinics in each state in accessible locations. Currently, there could be 1 or 2 nationwide. However, it is a could because it is not advised or promoted well at all, so someone who is addicted cannot easily have access to it. These are my sources. Thank you. Are there any questions?